You're listening to the CyberWire Network, powered by N2K.
We need a backup plan. One of the things that parents of chronically ill kids have is that you have a care plan with your hospital. And I think that this now needs to be a part of it.
Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to the Hacking Humans podcast, brought to you by N2K CyberWire. Every week, we delve into the world of social engineering scams, phishing plots, and criminal activities that are grabbing headlines and causing significant harm to organizations all over the world. I'm Dave Bittner, and joining me is Joe Kerrigan from the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Dave.
We got some good stories to share, and later in the show, my conversation with Catherine Murphy. She's one of my colleagues here at N2K. She's talking about the personal impact of the cyber attack on the Lurie Children's Hospital. But first, a word from our sponsor, KnowBe4. Where would InfoSec professionals be without users making security mistakes? Working less than 60 hours per week, perhaps. Actually having a weekend every so often. We get it. User behavior can be a challenge. But users can also be an InfoSec professional's greatest asset once properly equipped. What do we mean by that? Well, stay with us, and in a few minutes, we'll hear from our sponsors at KnowBe4 on that very question. All right, Joe, we are going to jump right into our stories this week. And I saw an article from the Washington Post here that caught my eye. And this is one of their travel writers who is talking about, how hard it is to get the correct phone number for airline customer service these days.
Well, Dave, why would a company that you give thousands and thousands of dollars to ever want to talk to you?
Well, once they get the money.
Right.
Right.
I mean, they got the money, Dave.
Yeah.
Why do you need to talk to customer service?
True.
Just get on the plane, Dave.
Right. What a world.
Right.
What a world. Get on the plane and hope that we put all the bolts in it. Right.
Hope that the doors don't fly off.
Quit your belly aching.
As we
right.
ascend. Don't sit. Now nobody wants to sit in the exit rows anymore.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that?
That's true. That's funny. So what's happening here is something we've described before, but I don't think we've ever addressed it directly with airlines themselves. And that's part of what caught my attention here, is that if you go to Google and you say, customer service, Delta Airlines.
Right.
There is a good chance that one of the first things, if not the first thing that's going to pop up, is a paid advertisement
to a scam site or to a scam number.
Right, but it'll say, Delta Airlines customer service, we're looking forward to taking your call or something like that. And then it'll have a phone number.
And that should be the red flag. We're looking forward to taking it.
Right.
I'm being facetious here.
So what happens if you call that number is someone will answer the phone and they will likely say, hello, thank you for calling Delta Airlines, your call is important to us. How may I help you today? And by the way, I'm just using Delta randomly here. Obviously, I'm not pointing them out as being better or worse than any of the other airlines.
Right.
But you'll get this person on the line who will sound to all the world as if they are a Delta Airlines representative, and they will be happy to take your information or try to work with you with whatever's going on. And odds are, over the course of that conversation, they're going to say to you something like, well, listen, just to verify your identity, I need to get a little information from you.
Yes. Of course.
Including your credit card number or your social security number.
What credit card did you use to book this flight?
Right. Your passport information. Anything that they could use to, the personal information that they could then try to sell. Sorry, I gotta give Fred, get out of my trash can. Fred the dog is with us here today, and All right, Fred.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Fred's welcome. Fred's a big dog, and he's also very insistent. Fred now has his head resting on my leg.
Oh, yeah.
Because
and
he
he'll
wants me
leave
to
it there
pet him.
until you stop petting him and tell him to go lay down.
Fred is Joe's dog, and he's
Yes.
visiting us here today in the studio, and he's very welcome. All right. So the folks from the Washington Post, they reached out to Google to say, hey, why is this still a thing?
Right.
Right?
Now, hold on just a minute. Does Washington Post, you think the people of Washington Post listen to this podcast where we constantly yell to Google, hey, why is this still a thing?
I don't know, but I'll go out on a limb here and say that the Google is more likely to take the Washington Post's phone call than ours.
Yes.
Just because of that banner
Right.
up on the masthead.
Yes.
Google says that these sorts of scams are extremely rare, but they did not want to define what constitutes an acceptable rate of occurrence. I would
Right.
say 0.
Yeah, that would be acceptable to me. And they're so rare, Dave, I've actually dialed the number dialed a scam number 3 or 4 different times.
Yeah.
So no, they're not rare. They're a frequent occurrence.
Yeah. And of course, they recommend what we've talked about here many times, which is go to the airline's website that you are aware of, type it in manually if you have to, and look for customer service from there.
Right.
One of the things this points out that I hadn't really thought about is quite often if you're trying to get a hold of an airline, you are in a situation of some stress.
Yes.
In other words, maybe your flight was just canceled.
Right.
Maybe you missed a flight. Maybe you missed a connecting flight. And so you're trying to set things right as quickly as possible. And that's something that these scammers take advantage of, is your heightened emotional state when you're trying to make this phone call.
Yeah. When I miss a connecting flight or miss a flight out of a place, I usually talk to the people right there in the airport, though. But I've noticed that when I'm doing that, there are people around me on the phone.
Right.
And
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, well, everybody's got a system. Everybody's got the way that they think works for them, and
Yep.
there's nothing wrong with that. And I suppose the folks who are on the phone are taking some of the load off of the people who are there at the
Oh,
counter.
absolutely.
And maybe they think there's a shorter line on the phone than there is with the folks at customer service.
I just want to look into the face of one of the airline company employees so they can see how angry I am. Usually, I don't know if you could tell this, Dave, but I'm not a big fan of airline companies. And the problem I have with them is that all their advertisements are all like, hey, come on, get on that plane. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. No,
Right.
It's always going to just be terrible. It's going to suck. It's just a Greyhound bus with wings on it. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And it's...
Have you ever heard the phrase, Joe, you get more flies with honey than vinegar?
Yes. My wife, at this point in time, my wife is the one that does the negotiating with these folks when something happens.
I see.
She goes,
So you know your limitations.
I know my limitations.
So you're the backup. If you need to bring in the big guns, the anger,
she
if
says,
the honey
"You're gonna have
doesn't
to-"
work, you're ready there with your vinegar super soaker.
You see that very angry man over there leaning up against that post?
Right.
If you don't give me what I want, you're going to have to deal with him.
Right. I don't want to have to bring him over here.
Right.
But I will if I need to. So we can do this the easy way or the hard way.
And I'm just over there scowling.
Yeah.
Like,
What I wonder is there ever going to be a point where Google has liability for this?
that's an excellent question. I think that is a better question for Ben Yellen.
Yeah.
Because I think I can absolutely envision a situation where somebody Googles something and gets scammed out of some amount of money, and they are furious and they just turn around and sue Google for not protecting them with their ad revenue.
Yeah.
Maybe Google's already done that calculus, and they say, we'll settle with them for however much it takes because we're making money hand over fist selling these ads to these cyber criminals.
Yeah. I mean, I would guess that somewhere in the EULA that it says we do not guarantee the accuracy of any information that you get on our site, that you use it at your own risk and that sort of thing.
I'm sure it says that, which means our site is useless. You shouldn't use it.
Well, I was kind of wondering, like, I love my analogies, and I was trying to go back old school with this. Like, what would happen in the old days if the phone company printed up the phone book and some scammer managed to put ads in the phone book that were, scam listings for things like airlines.
Right.
So when you went to your phone book to look up who should I call, and then you saw that scam at airline, would the publishers of the phone book have any liability for not having verified that the person who placed the ad was who they say they are?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either.
That would be a question again for Ben.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I wish I was a lawyer.
I will say on behalf of the rest of us, we're glad you're not. Because then you actually, I'm just imagining, yes, Your Honor, I am back.
After spending a couple days in jail for contempt of court, yes, here I am. I promise not to call you a dunderhead again.
Mr. Kerrigan. All right. Well, that is my story. We will have a link to that in the show notes there. Joe, what do you have for us this week?
So, Dave, my story actually comes from Mallory Sofaste up at WMAR News.
Oh, great.
And this story is about a continuation of the story that we have been talking about with the reporter from New York who was scammed out of $50,000 and put it into a shoebox for someone to come and get.
Right.
So Mallory is covering a similar scam that's going on and is hitting people in Maryland. And get this, Dave, the ICCC, the Internet Crime Complaint Center, has said that they have they're tracking this and they've lost this particular scam in the last half of last year, from like May to December of last year, $55 million.
For this particular scam?
For this particular scam, this one scam.
Wow.
And 7 people in Maryland lost a combined total of $3.8 million.
Holy smokes.
That's more than $500,000 a person. These losses are absolutely devastating and life-changing.
Yeah.
So Mallory quotes the supervisory special agent, SSA, Keith Custer, with the FBI, who says, and I like what Special Agent Custer says here.
I know Keith.
Oh, do you know Keith?
Yeah, I've interviewed him. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he's from the Baltimore Bureau.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be shocked.
The folks in the Baltimore field office.
Yeah, the Baltimore field
office. Yep.
He says, any person can fall for this scam. People that are younger, people that are older, educated, uneducated. No one is immune. This is, I am so happy to hear somebody else say this other than us.
Okay.
Right?
Sure.
Because so often I hear, and we had a listener who wrote in last week that this could have been easily stopped by just hanging up and doing, yeah, okay, right. Anybody can fall for this scam. And I get, you're right, the best practice is going to stop the scam, but still, if they get you and they flip those emotional switches in your head, that's the game.
Yeah.
That's it. There's another quote in here from Keith that says, the bad guys can get as much as they can, and we've had one person who's lost over $2 million.
Wow.
That's probably their retirement savings. I mean,
yeah, could very well be.
That person is now, I don't know that this is the case, but I'm going to guess that their life is going to change significantly after this. All this while being lied to and told that the money is going to be kept in safekeeping. Something else that the FBI is saying is that they're seeing victims being directed to purchase gold bars or silver or some other precious metal that they can easily obtain online, then dropping this or cash into the hands of couriers that have been sent to pick up the funds from the victims. So these people that are coming to pick up the funds may not be the criminals themselves, but just couriers that the criminals have sent. Now, are these couriers part of the criminal element, or are they just couriers that have been contracted, legit couriers that are being abused here? I don't know. But that's
let me ask you this, Joe. If I wouldn't even know how to buy $500,000 worth of gold or silver or precious metal. And I'm sure the bad guys will tell you how to do it.
Right, yeah.
But would you know right now how to go out and buy a large
physical silver?
Yeah.
No.
Like if I said to you, Joe, you got go bring me back a gold bar and you got 24 hours to do it. Would you know how to do that? I wouldn't.
No. I would not know how to do that. I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Yeah.
But as I'm sitting here thinking, I'm thinking those gold bars are going to end up in the bad guy's hands at some point in time.
Right.
Right. I could build something that kind of looks like a gold bar. It has a tracking device in it.
Made of lead.
Right. Made out of lead.
Right.
Lead's actually hevier than gold.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you hollow it out a little bit to put your tracking device inside.
Yeah, exactly.
See, there you go. So
now it's encased in lead, so you can't get the signal out.
Yeah. Oh, well. Best laid plans.
Yeah, the problems. Maybe you can use the lead as an antenna. Who knows? Dave, yesterday I was testifying in front of the Maryland Senate Finance Committee.
Okay.
Down in Annapolis. And we were talking about a new bill that's come out that's being sponsored by our state senator, Katie Fry Hester.
Okay.
That is, if this bill passes into law, if it gets out of committee and goes to the floor, gets voted on, the governor signs it. What will happen is the office of the AG will then be tasked and funded for doing a public service messaging campaign to let people know about these scams.
Oh, that's good.
Haven't seen anything like this coming from any government organizations before. Plenty of things like this from the AARP and other advocacy groups. There, I finally got it out.
Right.
Now I try to say it again like a dummy. Groups like that, but there's not a lot of states and federal government doing this, which I think would be a good spend of tax dollars. I'm actually on board with this. That's why
I have seen, because we've mentioned here, I have an elderly father, and so I have seen like handouts, like little workbooks and packets of information with these sorts of scams from, I believe, the Maryland State's Attorney's Office.
Yeah, the Attorney General's office?
I'm sorry, yes, the Attorney General's office of informational kinds of things about, how, if you're a senior, how not to get scammed. So there is some money being spent on that sort of thing, but to me, I think it's a good investment. Yeah,
this would be a substantially large investment.
Yeah.
Anyway, while we're down there testifying, the chair of the committee, who is Senator Pamela Beadle, perhaps Beadle, I don't know how it's pronounced, I'm sorry, I only read it, said that someone in her community had recently been scammed out of $66,000.
Wow.
I mean, so these kind of crimes just keep happening.
Yeah.
And they're getting, these attackers are getting much better at getting larger amounts of money out of people, it seems.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder what is it going to take to turn the tide? I don't have the answer to that. And
I don't know either.
When I talk to the experts on this, they don't have the answer either. I mean, it's not easy because there's so many elements to it, and it is a cat and mouse game. But I just wish there was something. I've heard people say that for example, that cryptocurrency is a major enabler of this, because it allows them. You can send money around basically outside of the banking system.
Yep, absolutely.
So if you were able to put some kind of limits on that could help slow it down. But that's not going to stop somebody from handing a gold bar to somebody on their front porch.
Right. And there's, I mean, I don't even, you asked if I had any idea where to get gold. I don't own precious metals. I just never have.
Yeah.
But I think the best way to get around this problem, to solve this problem, is a public education campaign. Something has to happen. People need to be aware of their rights, because a lot of times when they're on the phone with these guys, they say, I think I'd like to talk to my attorney. Oh, no, don't do that. Law enforcement should never say that.
Right.
And I think there's case law that even says that law enforcement can never say that. That once you say, I think I want to talk to my attorney, they have to say, okay, and they have to stop questioning you. That's another question for Ben.
Yeah.
We should have Ben on the show as a guest one day, so I don't just shoot my mouth off and say a bunch of incorrect legal stuff.
Put Ben on speed dial.
Right.
Have a little chat bot here where we can check in with Ben. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've seen in the police procedurals, which are by no means, accurate when it comes to actual how it works. But I've seen the cops will say something like, "Well, you could go that way, but it just means that it's going to slow things down for you."
Yeah, I can't help you if you go that way.
Right, exactly. Right, exactly. But I don't know how accurate that is. So, yeah. Well, it's interesting, and we will have links to these stories here in the show notes. Joe, it is time to move on to our catch of the day.
Dave, our catch of the day comes from the Washington University in St. Louis. This is from their Scam of the Month posting. They publish monthly cybersecurity articles. I like this site. If you go to the link that we're going to put in the show notes and then click on the little news part, you get all their cybersecurity articles. And they're focused on Washington University in St. Louis. And in fact, that's where our catch of the day is from. But they are applicable to everything. So this is actually an article written by David Persder.
Okay.
And it has a picture of the letter that came to some recipient at the university.
Yeah. All right. And it's the title. So this is an email.
An email.
And the title is Research Assistant Vacancy for Undergraduate.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, Redefined Research Assistant Opportunity. Washington University in St. Louis Department of Computer Science and Engineering is looking for research assistants who are willing to work remotely for $350 a week. Students from any department at the university may participate in the study. Text Professor Patrick Crowley at this phone number with your full name, email address, department, and year of study to receive the job description and additional application requirements. Many regards, Professor of Computer Science Patrick Crowley. All right, so
this article is great because David goes through here and takes this thing apart bit by bit.
Okay.
And number one, the email address is from some UK car company.
Oh.
So it comes from a car company in UK. Number two, the sender's name is Alexis Scott, but the email address starts with Paul. So whoever the sender is, they are not Patrick Crowley.
Yeah.
Additionally, you can get Professor Crowley's contact information off the directory.
So Professor Crowley is a real person.
He's a real person.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right.
Phrasing is odd, and there's typos throughout. They tell you to text some information. This tactic moves the conversation, I like what he says here, to a medium that is not managed by WashU, making it more challenging for the InfoSec team to intervene. This is the classic change of platform.
Yeah.
They're kicking it off with a change of platform. The phone number they provide is an area code from New Mexico, which may or may not be significant. I don't know. That wouldn't raise any red flags for me anymore.
Okay.
Because I saw somebody say that area codes are meaningless except as heraldry for where you came from. Right? So like if you were to move to a different state, you'd still keep the same phone number.
That's true.
Right? Area codes don't mean the location you live in any.
Mm-hmm. Joe, you remember when dialing an area code meant that you're probably going to get in trouble with your parents for having a big phone bill?
Oh, yeah.
We're old.
I did. I remember when we used to have to dial 301. I mean, you grew up here, right? Do you remember when your area code was 301?
Yeah, the whole state of Maryland was 301.
Right, exactly. And then when it changed,
they added 410.
You became 410, and I stayed 301.
Right.
Until I moved up here.
Yeah.
And got a
my first phone number was 465, which was HO6, which the HO was for Howard County.
Really?
Yeah. That's how it used to work. And then, and then we took the auto gyro to Istanbul. We wore onions on our belts, which was the fashion at the time.
Right.
So, all right. So what else here, Joe?
Orders had pictures of bees on them. There's a job application site called Handshake. Apparently, that's a WashU thing where if you're going to work at WashU or do any research for them, you have to go through this system. And that's not listed here in any way, shape, or form.
Oh.
So this is just a scam. Somebody's just trying to get personal information, probably so they can start a follow-on scam after you apply for this position. If they can't get you to with this scam, they're still going to have your information and try to hit you with other scams.
Yeah, I have to say that other than the one obvious typo in here,
right?
This is a pretty clean.
It's pretty
email.
good, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems plausible. It doesn't have huge red flags here, but I guess that also points out that these days you got to really dig in and be careful.
Oh yeah, if I can get a large language model to just generate a phishing email, it's not going to have any red flags.
Yeah, that's true. All right, well, we would love to hear from you. If there's something you would like us to consider for our catch of the day, you can email us. It's hackinghumans@n2k.com. we're talking about making users into an asset for security professionals. Simply put, users want to do the right thing. They're often just lacking the knowledge to do so. That's one of the reasons KnowBe4 has released Security Coach, a real-time security coaching tool that takes alerts from your existing security stack and sends immediate coaching to users who've taken risky actions. For example, imagine a user has visited a high-risk website or tried to open a document containing malware. Existing security tools will likely block that action, but the user might not understand why. Security Coach analyzes these alerts and provides users with relevant security tips via email or Slack, coaching them on why the action they just took was risky. Help users learn from their mistakes and strengthen your organization's security culture with Security Coach. Learn more about Security Coach at knowbe4.com/securitycoach. That's knowbe4.com/securitycoach. Joe, I recently had the pleasure of speaking with Catherine Murphy. She is actually one of my colleagues here at N2K CyberWire. She is a sales director here. And we were talking about the personal impact that the recent cyber attack on Lurie Children's Hospital up near Chicago has had on her and her family. Here's my conversation with Catherine Murphy.
So I have a beautiful 10-and-a-half-year-old son named Jack, who was born with extreme complications. And during my pregnancy, we knew he would be born with some challenges. So he was delivered in the hospital right adjacent to the amazing Lurie Children's Hospital. He spent the first 6 months of his life in the ICU. And since then, we have a very close relationship with several different departments there, stemming from breathing with pulmonary and the ENT department, and all the way to cardiac and kidney and orthopedic. And his real challenges stem from breathing. He was born with tracheomalacia, which is the narrowing of your airway. And he's required a trachea to be surgically implanted shortly after birth, along with he was ventilator dependent for several years. So we've kept in, to put it mildly, very close contact with all of his specialists at Lurie Children's Hospital. And that includes via MyChart, via email, via phone. Being a critical care family, having that constant contact and the accessibility to your specialist is pertinent with day-to-day life, even removing illnesses and other challenges that can pop up along the way. You need to be able to have that communication line open at all times. And that has been, for us, our biggest challenge with this current incident with Lurie's.
So what is the day-to-day like? You know, I guess it's fair to say, and I don't mean this flippantly, that you are a frequent flyer of that particular institution. And so I would imagine you're used to a certain cadence of interaction, of like, you know how things work there.
Absolutely. We definitely have a frequent cadence, me multiple times a week. I'm chatting with his pulmonologist. I'm chatting with his ENT. I'm putting even our specialist that we have out in the suburbs by us, his therapist, in touch with those doctors down at Lurie's multiple times a week. And what we're doing is not only, you might make some changes to his care, and then you're looking to touch base in a couple days to see like how have those changes affected him for the good or for the worse, and do we need to make continual changes? And again, that's something that is crucial to a child who has chronic illnesses.
So what was the first indication that something had gone amiss here?
First indication I saw was on social media. I saw a post on LinkedIn about Lurie Children saying, please be aware that we are having challenges with our systems, with our internet, with our email, and with our phone. I was unaware, as most people were initially, what that entailed, but it was a scary thing. with just the hope and assumption that it would be short term. I think nobody expected it to be what it is. I have a Lurie's care coordinator who is somebody who works for the hospital but stays in touch personally with me and with doctors, who had also sent me a text saying, we're unsure of the specifics of this, but please hang tight and we'll keep in touch and let you know next steps shortly.
Well, walk me through how this played out. As the mom of someone who's depending on this hospital, how did this progress?
So we were very lucky, and I say lucky in the sense of things could have been much worse. This obviously started at the end of January, and my son was thankfully in a position where initially he was not sick for a couple weeks, which during cold and flu season is very rare for him. So we did not need to be in constant contact with his doctors. We could kind of be in standby mode for the initial part of this. As time progressed and as Murphy's Law played out, he got sick, and it became something that I did need to speak with a specialist. And even his pediatrician is located proximity-wise very close to Lurie Children's Hospital and is on the same system. So they were having the exact same challenges as Lurie's was. And it just became where I had to put him in the car and drive at record-breaking speeds downtown to get him seen by a doctor, because it was the only way to have a conversation with somebody about his care. There was no televisits. There was no My Chart or phone or even texting with a doctor at this option. So that's what it comes down to, is you either run to an ER or you take the chances of trying to manage care at home, which can be very dicey.
So just so I understand here, you're saying that this had gotten to the point where you would basically show up unannounced because you couldn't make an appointment. You couldn't make a phone call to the hospital.
Correct. There was zero communication. So your only option was to show up. I know my doctor has some open hours, so I happen to be lucky to have those. Otherwise, your option is to go straight to the Lurie's ER. The challenge there with the Lurie's ER is it was back to COVID times. There were 8 to 10 hour waits to get in because it was the only option for everyone. And there was nothing else. It was either that or, try a local hospital, which don't really have a high comfort zone with chronically ill children.
I see. So how did this continue to play out, and where do we stand now?
Well, it's continued on, and what made it even more challenging was when AT&T went out, because then, albeit a short period for most people, it felt like eternity, because then you removed even the texting option with care coordinators. And since then, it's honestly just been the same thing where I've had to just physically bring him in if he needs to see somebody. And it's continued to be the only option. I know that they're trying to get things back up and working. I had a conversation with a care coordinator yesterday who said that the internal internet for Lurie's is back up, but they are still anticipating it may not be until April until they're fully up and running. So it's just that increased and exacerbated anxiety and vulnerability feeling all the time as a parent of a chronically ill child that I'm living day to day, or even sometimes when he's sick, hour to hour, about, can I manage this from home or can I take him in?
Yeah. How do you deal with that frustration? I mean, I'm imagining, myself as a parent, that I would find myself having an impulse to kind of cast blame or lash out, or, there would be times when I could only take so much. It's
true, right? Like a natural parent is that fight or flight for your child is just to become the mommy bear and to protect your children. And it's the one thing I say that I have learned, though, through Jack's journey is patience and taking a deep breath. And we've been trained on so many things for him. And I do have so many options at home for, emergency breathing, measures if I needed to take something, or oxygen in the house. And that said, it's also just learning that sometimes if you need to run in, you need to run in. Sometimes I have to drop everything and go. Sometimes I'm hoping I get pulled over by a police officer on the way so he can give me an escort.
Mm.
And you have to do what you have to do sometimes. And it just becomes where their health is always the first priority, but it just becomes the first priority in your day. Sometimes I have to put a pause on everything else, including my other healthy child, because his needs come first. And again, for him, it can very quickly become life or death. So it's something that you just kind of always need to be in ready to pounce mode.
Have you heard any stories from other folks in your community who have been dealing with the same situation?
I have. So another role that I love having is I'm a parent liaison for Lurie Children's Hospital. And what that entails is that I get to be a parent that other families can reach out to if they have challenges with insurance or nursing or care or just general questions about the journey that they're on. And I've heard some really scary stories about people who, something happens and in a chronic situation, you could have minutes. And they're either in a situation where they have to call 911 or they have to race to another hospital and then be airlifted to Lurie's, or, a nurse has a challenge or a question about a medication, or they can't receive a medication because Lurie's can't dispense medications electronically. And so now they're also trying to, try to get what their child needs, just anything from a basic ADHD medication to a prescription to receive oxygen, or a prescription to receive continued nursing services, or a prescription to receive continued ventilator support and services at home. It's sickening. It's mind blowing. And it's hard to believe in today's age that this is, one, happening, and two, been happening for so long.
I'm really interested in your insights, your thoughts about the people who are responsible for this. It's a technical situation here. But people did this. These are, presumably people on the other side of the world who, out of a sense of greed, have come at a vulnerable system and are using vulnerable children to put the pressure on for financial gain.
Absolutely. I have a few choice words that I'm probably not allowed to use at this moment, but I do believe that there is a special place in hell for those people. I understand their motivation is financially driven. I don't understand how you sleep at night knowing that you are literally putting children's lives and healthcare at risk for pure financial gain. I don't understand it. I don't agree with any cybersecurity attack, but I think something where you're affecting somebody's healthcare, you're affecting lives on a daily basis, it's unfathomable to me that someone could choose to take this type of action.
Are there any things that you've learned coming out of this? Any words of wisdom for other parents who may in the future find themselves up against these kinds of challenges?
I think it's made myself, and I can imagine other families, aware that we need a backup plan. And maybe that's something similar that we have to corporations, but you need a backup plan to communication. You need a backup plan for prescription medications in case this happens again. You need a backup plan for just scheduling appointments, for having a visit. Everyone's answer can't be to go to the ER because some are critical and some are not. And there's just got to be a plan B in place all the time. And one of the things that parents of chronically ill kids have is that you have a care plan with your hospital. And I think that this now needs to be a part of it. It needs to be, one of these, we're aware that these things can happen and they do happen, and a plan for if and when they do.
Joe, what do you think?
Dave, this was a tough listen for me.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to listen to, personal story. I don't know. It's not hard. Like, I can do it. It's just, I don't.
Do you feel for them?
Yeah, I feel for them. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't like feeling things, Dave.
Okay, fair enough.
But here we get to see firsthand the impact that a cyber attack can have on patients and their families.
Right.
And it doesn't make life any easier.
Yeah.
All of our systems have become so dependent on the proper operation of their underlying technology. When I mean systems, I mean, think of our healthcare system or our electrical distribution system, our water system.
Yeah.
All these things are dependent on that underlying technology, and that technology being vulnerable is problematic.
Yeah.
If you lose access to like a phone system, which might be running voice over IP, right, and your doctor can't answer the phone because the computer network's down. Now, getting in touch with a necessary medical professional involves getting into the car or calling an ambulance and just going to the facility. And if you have to go in unannounced because you can't announce yourself, there's no communication system that's functional.
Right.
So it's very difficult. Going to the ER is going to be an issue as well because everybody's in the same boat, right? There is no way to make a phone call to your doctor to ask them the question, especially if they're all in a similar situation like Catherine and her son.
Yeah.
Right? And this is going to be going on until April. That's when they think that Lurie is going to be restored to full operation.
I just saw today a news article that the ransomware gang who's claiming responsibility for this, which is the Riceta ransomware gang, they claim to have made $3.4 million selling the information that they gathered in this ransom attack.
So Lurie did not pay them, it sounds like.
I believe that is correct.
Right. Okay. So they've already gone out and compounded their atrocity with another atrocity.
Yeah.
I do. Catherine said this. I have a few choice words for these people, and here they are. You are monsters, inhuman monsters. A children's hospital. It is a special kind of evil person that does that.
Yeah.
You know, in America, people that are offenders with child victims do not do well in prison. And so I don't know, maybe it's a cultural thing where I have a real problem with this, you know, but yeah. I don't know. I just think this is wrong. You're going after a children's hospital and you're selling the data of their patients. They're kids.
Well, and I know, you know, the way of the world right now is of course complex, but in the same way that, you know, international treaty states that in times of war you don't attack hospitals,
right?
And obviously that's not always abided by, but but that is the norm. That's the established and agreed upon norm. You know, yes, we have nations who allow these sorts of criminals to function, to do their business within those nations. Couldn't we, at the very least, establish an international standard where we agree with those nations? Look, here's the line.
Right.
You know, and if you're coming after a children's hospital, there's going to be consequences for you.
Right.
Because, you know, it's one thing to, look, it's all crime, but it's one thing to take down or steal somebody's credit card number and, you know, buy a boombox.
Right, yeah.
Right, or whatever, you know. But
to jeopardize the life of children.
To jeopardize the life of children is a whole different level of atrocity, and it should simply be off the table internationally, and yet it is not.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's got to be something. I don't know what we're going to do with some of these. I don't know where this organization is based out of.
Yeah.
But they're based out of Russia. Russia does not extradite.
Right.
So they just don't.
Yep.
Our technology makes so many things possible, right? Like the fact that we can do this podcast, right? The fact that we can have more efficient delivery of healthcare services, the more, you know, even more efficient delivery of just about all of our services.
Right.
But that technology is vulnerable. Catherine is correct here. We need to have backup plans, better backup plans for more resilient systems here.
Yeah. I think it's a really good point. And I saw someone just earlier this week who was making the point that it was sort of an end-stage capitalism rant. But, you know, they were saying that at this point where we are in our society, so many things have become single points of failures. Everything has been stripped down to be delivered just in time with the least expensive, least amount of, possible backup to it because we don't want to invest in the backup.
It's lean, Dave.
Yeah.
It's all lean.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the cool new management.
And that leads to these sorts of things.
Yeah.
I suppose that's a result of the pace at which things run these days. But I don't know. I would love to see that pendulum swing in the other direction.
Yeah, me too. One of the problems is, and if anybody can hear the air quotes when I say problems, is that the fact is these systems are actually really good, right? They're fast, they're efficient, and they work well. And they get things
when
done.
they work well.
But if they go down and we're reliant on them, it's like having the rug yanked out from underneath you. It's devastating.
Yeah, in the perfect world, there would be like a broom closet that had like one of those giant scissor switches from the Frankenstein movie, right? And when the system goes down, somebody goes in there and they just throw that switch and sparks fly, and it just switches over to an exact duplicate of the system, that's been running backups and is just ready to go. But no one's going to spend the money to do that.
Right. Yeah. It's, now they're spending the money on their disaster recovery plan execution right here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, Dave, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Does it strike you as odd that we need a prescription for oxygen?
Okay. So, first of all, I'm not convinced that we do. Now, I guess you need a prescription for medical grade oxygen, but you can go to your local Dick's Sporting Goods and you can buy a bottle of oxygen.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So oxygen itself is available. I guess what I'm saying is oxygen is not a controlled substance.
Right.
And I suppose you can get it for like welding or, there are all sorts of industrial uses for oxygen that you can buy it. But I guess the prescription is just because there's a danger with oxygen because it is highly flammable.
Oh, yeah. It's really flammable.
Yeah.
Dave.
So you don't want, you could see people just going, if you could go to the drugstore, buy yourself a big tank full of oxygen and come back home and then resume smoking,
right.
Bad things could happen. So.
Once we're done recording, I'll tell you my oxygen story.
Okay.
But I'm not incriminating anybody on the air.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know towards the end of her life, my mother needed oxygen. And so that was a regular thing that you folks would come and they'd drop off the tanks and they'd pick up the old tanks. And it was just it was just a regular part of her life.
Yeah.
Towards the end there. But I guess I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I feel, I guess what I'm saying is my experience was that there were no big barriers in, my loved one getting the oxygen that they needed.
Right. Now, did they bring in the little tiny cart with the little tank of oxygen on it, or do they bring in the big, like, acetylene, the one that sits next to the acetylene tank in the acetylene oxygen cutter?
So there were a couple different things. There were the little tanks that look kind of like oversized water bottles or oversized, metal water bottles.
Right.
Right. So that was that. But then there was another machine that actually, I believe, was just like pulling oxygen out of the air.
An oxygen concentrator.
Yeah, exactly. So she had one of each of those.
Okay.
So I don't know if one was a backup for the other, but yeah. And then I remember on the occasion of her passing, those were one of the first people to come get their stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
They wanted that stuff back, which is fine. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But it's one of those odd things you remember when you're new to that sort of situation. You're like somebody knocking the door. Hi, we're here for the oxygen stuff. Oh, well, okay, here you go.
Yeah. You never really think of end-of-life care.
Right, exactly.
But there are entire processes around it. I know somebody who works in hospice care.
Right.
And it's, I don't know, I'm fascinated by it. Maybe it's some kind of morbid curiosity that I have, but there are a number of other things that fascinate me as well, like utilities and agriculture. I think those are, but this also, I mean, like, what do we do when someone passes away?
Yeah.
How do we take care of that?
Yeah. It's, if you've never been through it before, and when my mom passed, it was my first time being through it, being directly involved with it.
Right.
It is, it is fascinating.
Yeah.
There are all sorts of things that go against your expectations for what happens.
And one of the things I've been impressed with is everybody I've talked to has said that everybody they've dealt with has been remarkably compassionate during that process.
Yes.
And that to me means that the people that work in that field, they're a special kind of person.
I agree. I will also note that when you officially, our experience, and you know, this is one person's experience with one time going through this, is that when the loved one is officially put into hospice care, everything changes for the better. In that the level of care that they get goes up. It's just like you basically everything they need just happens because they're in an end of life situation, which I did not know going into it. So you know that was a pleasant surprise. It helps offset the emotional burden that you go through, knowing that this is the pathway, this is the irreversible pathway that your loved one is on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, thank you to Catherine Murphy for joining us. Again, she is one of my colleagues here at N2K CyberWire. So appreciative of her sharing this story and her honesty and authenticity.
Yeah,
it was a real pleasure.
That was great of her to do. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to thank all of you for listening, and of course, we want to thank our sponsors at KnowBe4. They are experts in helping users do the right thing through new school security awareness training. All right, well, that is our show. We want to thank all of you for listening. Our thanks to the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute for their participation. You can learn more at isi.jhu.edu. A quick reminder that N2K Strategic Workforce Intelligence optimizes the value of your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your team while making your team smarter. Learn more at n2k.com. This episode was produced by Liz Stokes. Our mixer is Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producers are Jennifer Iben and Brandon Karpf. Our executive editor is Peter Kilpie. I'm Dave Bittner.
And I'm Joe Kerrigan.
Thanks for listening.